Are they interested? Are Juventus interested in
Right.
Sancho? And if so,
Yeah.
where is he on the pecking order?
Let me clear this up from the information that I've got. So Juventus are going for Conceição, and Sancho is going to be the one they'll go for if they can't get Conceição. That's slightly changed over the last couple of weeks in that they are interested in both players.
Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and we are here once again with Dharmesh Sheth, Sky Sports News reporter, and we are here to talk transfers. But first of all, Dharmesh, how you doing, mate?
Very well, very well. I was hoping to say to you that there's been a couple of signings for United since we last spoke, which we thought there might be, but alas, the waiting game continues.
The waiting game does continue, but we'll get into the details of where we are with this waiting game, especially on the Mbeumo side. Some potential outs as well, because it seems like there could have been a little bit of movement on some of them. We're hearing some people linked with Sancho and Rashford, but we'll get into all of that. But let's start with Bryan Mbeumo, because obviously this is the one that, I don't want to say saga, because I feel like the term transfer saga is overused, but we're edging towards this being... It's dragging out, isn't it? We can say that much. This one is definitely dragging out. What is the latest with Bryan Mbeumo? Where are these two clubs in terms of coming to a deal?
Still talking. I'm sorry I can't give you more than that, but United haven't gone back in since they made that second bid worth £62.5 million, which was £55 million initial payment, £7.5 million in performance-related add-ons. So United have been talking internally. I think the lines of communication between the two clubs are still open because both clubs agree that there is a deal to be done here because they know the player desperately wants to go to United as well. However, Brentford are standing firm, as is their right, because they think that £65 million at least is a realistic price for Bryan Mbeumo. But I think this deal, because if you look at the deal, the bid that United made, it's not too far away from £65 million in total. But this is going to come down to the structure of that deal and those add-ons. So I think Brentford, by the sounds of it, want the majority, if not all of that £65 million to be guaranteed. So Manchester United are going to have to come up with a deal whereby Brentford are going to be happy that they're going to see the majority, if not all of that £65 million in whatever shape or form. And this can come down to these add-ons. It's the little details that, when transfer fees are like discussed between clubs. So say, for example, Manchester United's last bid, say they improve their bid, for example, to 55 plus 10 to make it to 65 million. There is still a chance that Brentford may go for a potential deal like that, but provided that those £10 million add-ons, the majority of them are very easily achievable. So it could be based on appearances, goals. It's when you get into the add-ons maybe being linked to the success that Manchester United might have. So United, I'm just surmising here, I'm just speculating here on potential conditions that United might want to put in there. For example, getting a Champions League finish. Now, Brentford might look at that and say, well, is that realistic? United finished well in the bottom half of the Premier League last season. What chance is there realistically of them jumping into the top 4 or 5 next season? That's what Brentford's thinking might be if there was a potential condition like that. But it is going to come down to the structure. So the more that United can put up front, the more amenable I think Brentford are going to be. Because you're going to have a situation where they are going to want to see or have a guarantee that the majority of that money will go into their coffers at some stage during the contract that Mbeumo is at United if he is to join.
Yeah, I think it does make sense from Brentford's perspective. This is their best player, isn't it? Their most valuable player. I don't think they could sell anyone in the squad and they would get 65 million quid for them. And I think as well, when we look at the Wolves one, you might have even mentioned this before, but because that was a release clause, that's guaranteed, isn't it? That's 62.5 million, and they're getting all of that regardless, because that's the number you have to tick over. But I think what is actually taking so long? I know you're not in the room, and I don't expect you to have the exact details on this, but let's assume that there's 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people working on this at Manchester United. We've got Christopher Vivell. I'm sure Jason Wilcox is having a say in it. Maybe Omar Barada's giving some advice here and there. Then we've got the sort of the negotiators. I think Matt Hargreaves is one of those guys. So we've got these people who work for Manchester United who are seemingly, like you said, there's an open dialogue here. the number of add-ons, obviously you could come up with anything. If he gets 10 yellow cards in his first game, we don't give you any money. But realistically, how many different types of add-ons are there? A dozen, 2 dozen? I don't, how many goals he gets, appearances, how...
Every deal is different. Every deal is different.
Yeah,
it depends on the player as well. So, for example, if a club was signing a player who had a bad injury record, then a lot of those performance-related conditions might be reliant on the number of games that particular player might play. Because if they're going to be spending big money on someone who might have had a dodgy injury record, then they're going to want to weight a lot of those conditions and those add-ons on his appearances. And that's not the case with Mbeumo. Mbeumo, of course, has been a pretty regular for Brentford. I'm just saying, generally, when these conditions are worked out, it can be on anything. I think before we spoke on it off air, didn't we? We were talking about the Anthony Martial deal. There might have been a Ballon d'Or clause in there somewhere, which, Manchester United, I doubt, would even dare put that in to Mbeumo's potential fee, because Brentford would see that as pretty unrealistic for them to see that money. For example, if it's £1 million, if it was to win the Ballon d'Or, Brentford would probably write that £1 million off. So I think it's quite complex, but also you've got to look at the recent history of Manchester United in the transfer window, in the transfer market. They don't want to waste any more money. They are changing the way they are doing their transfers. They are focusing at the moment on the 2 big targets that they've had in this window so far, in Cunha and Mbeumo, players who've got Premier League experience, but who are going to command higher fees because of the Premier League tax and the Manchester United tax, if you like. But also, they want to save as much as they can on every little part of a deal. That's what they're aiming to do. It's just like these marginal gains that we kept hearing about when Ineos came into the club. It can be in the form of £1 million being saved here, because they've been doing that since they've arrived, right? They're trying to save money all throughout the club. So why wouldn't transfers be any different?
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, because when you think of some of the cost-cutting measures that they've done, where you'll see it on a list and it saves £15,000 or £6,000, you think if they're that strict about that, they're willing for people to lose their jobs for this, that, and the other. I guess you would be particularly sort of detailed on these hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds when it comes to transfers. At least you would hope that that's what's going on. That it is this very much a case of, we want the books to be absolutely laser detailed, and we're going to get everything lined up perfectly. And to do so, we have to spend X. But I just think, even with all that being said, we sort of, what was it, almost a month ago now that last bid was put in. I think, how many permutations, how many back and forths can you need?
There could be another issue here as well with regard to the instalment payment as well of the guaranteed amount. So Manchester United will always be going for a longer payment schedule rather than, say Brentford wanted it in 3 installments. Manchester United might be suggesting 4. Is there a discussion going on about the number of installments as well? Because remember, in a day of an era of PSR, that can make a massive difference, because you're almost getting, by according to the accounts, the player cheaper slightly, because you're spreading those payments over a longer period rather than having to pay a bigger amount over a smaller period. This is the Cunha deal. Manchester United tried to explore a different payment method. Wolves are not going to have any of it. They said this is set in stone now. This is £62.5 million. That's not negotiable. And the other thing that's not negotiable is the fact that it's got to be paid in 3 installments. So 20.5 million pounds, £20.75 million per installment is what the contract will say. And that's what Manchester United will have to pay. No arguments.
Yeah, I think with Xerxes they even spent above slightly the release clause, didn't they, in order to have a longer payment structure, which, like you said, almost makes him cheaper, even though you're spending more. Yeah. So I know obviously you don't know what Manchester United are going to do. They might not even know what they're going to do. When would you expect another bid to go in? And do you think it's almost now, because we are so close in terms of overall fee here, I can't imagine there's going to be 2, 3, 4 more bids. It almost feels like we've had so much negotiation, so much detail, that do you feel like the next one kind of is the one, if you get what I'm saying? How can there be space for two or three more bids? When do you think that could happen?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually how transfers work. I don't think it's a case of a club. You don't often see a club blindly going in with bid after bid after bid after bid. They were probably told after their first bid what was required. And so United proposed what they did, the 55 plus 7.5, which wasn't acceptable for Brentford. So they now know what Brentford want. So it will be a case of how they're going to structure that deal. And this is what's been happening in the background. And I know people are saying, why is it taking so long? Well, for the reasons that I've explained, they want to make sure that they get the right deal for United. So it's going to be the case where it won't be a case of they'll keep going back to Brentford with another bid, another bid, another bid. They'll have talked internally, they'll have talked with Brentford, and then almost, if it is to happen, this deal, which we still expect it to, a verbal agreement will happen before that official bid will then go in. And, you know, then you'll hear those phrases, it's been agreed in principle, and they're just finalising, you know, final conditions, and personal terms aren't expected to be a problem because he's agreed them in principle already. He wants to go to the club. That I think what United would love to happen is by this time next week to have that deal done, because they fly out to the States on the 22nd of July for their pre-season tour. I think the aim is to try and get the Mbeumo deal done so that he is part of that squad. I think Amorim really wants that, and he needs that as well. He wants as many of the players that are going to be starting next season as part of that squad and starting that tour, as opposed to where we've seen in the past, you know, if someone's going to join the tour in the middle of it. I think he and United would want it sorted before they fly out.
Yeah. Well, we're going out there as well, and I'm pretty desperate to see Bryan Mbeumo, I'll be honest with you. So even if it's just for me, get this done, Man United. Let's move on then, because obviously we could sort of talk all day about the nuances of why this deal is taking so long. A name that you have mentioned in the last hour or so on social media, Nicolas Jackson. This is a player that, just my opinion, one of the more frustrating players in the Premier League, I think, because on one hand, so much talent there, can carry the ball well, can finish, can do almost everything, and yet his catalogue of misses and missed chances and, you know, poor decisions is as long and as big as any. Are Manchester United interested in Nicolas Jackson?
Right. The situation with United and further incomings is that they are in the market for a striker. We do know that. That has been the case throughout this transfer window. And I was told earlier in this transfer window that it was regardless of Rasmus Højlund's future. So it would be Højlund and Xerxes staying, plus bringing in a number 9, whereby maybe take the pressure off these two players, if anything, but then also start for United as well. However, we have been saying this whenever I've been on, another big transfer like that will probably require sales at United to be able to fund the rest of that transfer window. We do know that the big priorities were Cunha and Mbeumo going into it, and then the next phase was player sales, which we'll come on to in a moment. But this what United are doing, they're just keeping an eye on his situation at the moment, because there are huge doubts about Nicolas Jackson's future at Chelsea now. They've signed Liam Delap, they've signed João Pedro. He was an unused substitute in the FIFA Club World Cup final. He was on the bench for the semi-final as well. So it's clear that when everyone is fit, not only João Pedro, but Liam Delap seem to be ahead of Nicolas Jackson in the pecking order at Chelsea. So is he probably thinking now is the time to maybe make that move? I don't think at Chelsea were entertaining any approaches during the Club World Cup because they wanted the focus to fully be on that. Let's see if that changes now. But there is clearly a doubt over his future. Aston Villa, they've been linked as well, and you can see why that is, because Unai Emery is a long-term admirer. He actually gave Nicolas Jackson his debut at Villarreal. AC Milan, I think, via intermediaries, have expressed their interest, but at the moment there's a big gap in valuation between what they would be prepared to pay and what they've heard Chelsea would want for Nicolas Jackson. But clearly he's one of a number of strikers that United have been looking at in this window. But again, it's one of those that might have to be put to the back burner. But there's no harm in, if they were really to go for him at some stage in this window, to make that interest clear. Because, you mentioned before, like players like Ekitike may be going elsewhere and there has been a link with United. Is that because they can't do a deal now, but we can do it later in the window once we've made some sales? So United in a bit of a situation where, yes, they do want to bring players in, but they do know that they need to balance the books as well. And they've got these 5 players that they've said, look, you can have a break from training for now, delay your return, sort out your future, because basically we want you out.
Yeah, we have to sort of remember, I think, as United fans, that this isn't just a summer of improving the team. It's also a summer of clearing out the unwanted parts of the team and like almost fixing the team. It's like we're going to the doctors rather than, buying a new Lamborghini. We need to actually resolve the issues here before we go and thrive and start running marathons. We need to get, our sore ankle sorted first, because we've got players in the squad that are almost negatives to the squad at the moment. And when we can get them out, it might almost put us, obviously I don't want to be looking 12 months ahead, but once you get those 5 players out, especially I think Sancho, Rashford, Antony and Garnacho, Malassi is a bit of a different case because he didn't cost a lot and he's not been any trouble. But once you get those 4 players out, then maybe in the windows coming 6 months, 12 months time, that's when it can just be all out. We are moving in the right direction now. I feel like we're still sort of fixing mistakes rather than completely sort of.
Look, it's clear
building the squad up.
It's clear Ruben Amorim doesn't want them around.
Yeah.
2 reasons. Look, financially they need to sell these players to be able to fund other players in this market. And some people might ask, you know what? Just get the players that United need and then worry about that later. But like I said before, they just don't want them around the training ground. He wants this to be a fresh start, does Amorim. And if you look at it, they haven't got any European football next season. So it's not a case that, he's going to need a big squad next season like he did maybe last season when there was, 3 games a week. He's not going to have that. Yeah. You have the cup games, but Premier League games is effectively going to be a game a week. And he wants to work with the squad that's going to take United forward and then progress to see where they can finish next season, at the end of next season. And maybe then, if it is to be a European campaign the season after, they'll be in a better place to be able to go into the market if these players aren't around anymore. But again, as United have shown, compared to other clubs, they find it so much more difficult selling these players than these other clubs seem to. It's quite bizarre.
It makes sense though, doesn't it? Because maybe we just focus on United so much here. Obviously, we do focus on United, but maybe this. But I don't feel as though there's other teams having these public fallouts with players quite as regularly as us at the moment.
They might do. They might do. They're just not getting out.
Same coverage and the same, because imagine going like you order a meal, you taste it, go, oh my god, that is horrible. I'll sell it to you for 15 quid. Yeah. No one's going to do that. No one's going to buy that. No. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with these players. We've told everyone they're bad apples, they're not good enough, and also they're terrible around the training ground. Do you want him? Why would anyone say yes to that? Let's have a look at some of these players and where we are up to with people saying yes to them, because we want to get rid of them at some point. I've seen a lot of sort of mention of Sancho to Juventus. Sancho generally, I think there was a Chelsea offer, wasn't there? Juventus seem interested. I saw on Sky a little bit earlier that Juventus are at the moment looking at other options and that Sancho might be an alternative, I think was the way that it was phrased on there. Porto winger Francisco Conceição, they're lining up a bid for him. Are Juventus interested in Sancho? And if so, where is he on the pecking order?
Let me clear this up from the information that I've got. Juventus had Francisco Conceição on a season-long loan last season from Porto. It was a straight loan. Now, to buy him, I think it's a 30 million euro release clause, but Porto want that paid in full up front. So that's where there was a negotiation between Juventus and Porto, because Juventus wanted to keep him. Now, initially, they were looking at Sancho as well. They spoke to United to explore the conditions of a deal. And I don't think the transfer fee was going to be a huge stumbling block, even though they would want to negotiate on what we believe to be a £25 million transfer fee and evaluation from United. But also they were speaking to his representatives. Now, on both counts, there hasn't been an agreement between Juventus and United or Juventus and his representatives over personal terms. Now, it was then phrased that Juventus are going for Conceição and Sancho is going to be the one they'll go for if they can't get Conceição. That's slightly changed over the last couple of weeks in that they are interested in both players. So they want, priority is Conceição. And Sky Italy, Gianluca Di Marzio, he's now reporting that that one could actually close this week if they can get that deal right with Porto. However, does that mean that they will stop their interest in Sancho? That's not the case. They remain interested in Jadon Sancho, and it's not an alternative as such to Conceição. However, to get Sancho and Conceição, they would have to then sell players. So they are keeping that interest in Sancho going. They still want him, but I think to be able to do Sancho after they were to bring in Conceição, it would depend on player sales, which is quite a familiar story because it seems to be the case that what Manchester United have got as well. And the irony of it is that they need to sell someone like Sancho to be able to fund their transfer window, whereas Juventus, to buy Sancho, they need to sell some of their players. But so it shouldn't be, at the moment, this could change. Conceição's imminent arrival, it looks like now, doesn't mean they won't go for Sancho. They like both of them. They want to sign both of them. Conceição is one they can do without any other dealings. Sancho is one they could do, provided they can make some sales.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I don't expect him to cut 9/10 of his salary. But you think of the stature of a club like Juventus, one of the top sort of 5 or 6 clubs in the world in terms of size, of history, of all that. I think if you're Jadon Sancho, after the couple of seasons he's had, to be able to play for someone like Juventus, surely is, at the sort of upper limit of what he could expect when he's thinking of leaving Manchester United. He's not. I don't think Real Madrid or Barcelona or PSG are going to come along. For me, if I'm him, I'm thinking, let's get this deal done because he needs to leave United, and Juventus is such a massive club.
I know.
Hopefully that can get done.
Joe, we think in a different way. We think it from the outside. If you put yourself in that position, so I'm not defending anyone here about their wages or whatever, but just say, for example, you, Stretford, Paddock say to you, okay, Joe, thanks, but all the best. You can leave.
I could see it.
You can leave. And you're on a certain wage and you get approached by someone else, but they aren't going to pay as much as Stretford Paddock are going to pay. And you're thinking, well, I don't have to leave. They're kind of saying I might be surplus, but I'm used to a certain lifestyle here. I'm getting paid this much. Why should I leave?
That's true. Someone's got to be able to fund my Robinson squash habit, haven't they? And if I can't, but then I obviously I do agree with that, and I don't expect Sancho to just lose all his money. But then milk doesn't cost more when you're richer. Bread doesn't cost. There are certain things where it's like once you're earning a certain amount, the cash on top of that is for luxury, isn't it? And obviously you want luxury, you want to keep your big house, you want to be able to fly your friends out. I get all that, and the state. Yeah, I get it.
It's also a status thing. If you remember Ronaldo. Yeah. He wanted to be the highest paid player in the world. Doesn't need the money. No, doesn't need to be. He doesn't need to get paid again. But it is. These players have got ego as well, right?
Yeah.
So they want to be. Oh, this guy is the highest paid player in the world. So Sancho has got a certain wage at the moment, and that's why the Chelsea deal didn't happen. They were willing to meet that obligation on the transfer. That wasn't going to be the issue because they'd agreed that before, but they tried to renegotiate the terms on Sancho's contract to effectively probably pay him less than what he was at United, but they couldn't agree on the personal terms. So that's the issue at the moment. And look, he's got a year left on his contract. United have got the option of a further year. Who's to say that he might just, I'll just sit it out for the next year? and then leave on a free next summer, because United are unlikely to exercise the option, because if they feel he's willing to stay there and not play and just take the money, then the option is on the same wage. You could just do it for another year, couldn't he? Which is not in United's interest. So it's a difficult situation. But this is like, you asked me before about, why can't United just get this deal done for Mbeumo? Well, they want to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that they've made before. So those few years when they were paying humongous transfer fees, but not only that, the enormous wages they were giving players, those days have got to stop now. They can't afford to be doing that anymore. Hence why any way that they can make any savings at all, they're going to try and do it.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think part of that comes with, instead of buying players from Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, etc., we're buying, or in Juventus, we're buying players from Atlanta, we're buying players from Lille, we're buying players from Wolves, where they will have been on under 100,000 probably, and then you can give them a big pay rise and you're still under 200, whereas before you're getting Casemiro, you're getting Varane, you're getting Ronaldo, you're getting Sancho, they're already on really good money. So, you kind of have to push the boat. I get it. It's, right, what about Rashford then? Someone who, a couple of years ago we all thought was going to be at United for the rest of his career. There's a lot of links to Barcelona. He wants to go there. Do they want him? What's going on there?
They do want him. They're still working to see if they can get a deal done. They've clearly explored the conditions of that deal. They were interested back in January as well. Yeah, it's clear that Rashford wants to go to Barcelona. He desperately wants to go there. It's just whether Barcelona can do that deal. Now, clearly, Manchester United want to do a permanent deal for Marcus Rashford. Clearly, they want to do a permanent deal for Jadon Sancho. But you can't rule out creative loans for these two players. But I think this time they would want the obligations put in place. I know they had the obligation put in place with Sancho. They'd want an obligation put in place with Marcus Rashford as well, because it was only an option, I think, with Aston Villa, which both parties decided not to take up. I think if Villa had gone into the Champions League, then maybe they would have triggered the option, and then it would have been up to Rashford to decide whether he wanted to stay or not. So you can't rule out another loan. But as I've said before, United have tried to be more creative in the past. I mentioned that deal that they did with Borussia Dortmund with Jadon Sancho, when the better that the club did, the more wages that club paid Manchester United. The higher the percentage was that they paid in the wages. And by the end, because they got to Champions League final, United actually made a profit on Sancho's wages. And then add to that, when they sent him to Chelsea on loan, when Chelsea didn't take up the obligation, they'd inserted that penalty, which was a £5 million penalty. So they've made bits and pieces of money here and there, clearly not substantial amounts, but, maybe bits of profit that they can look at and say, there are ways that if a permanent deal can't be done, we can ensure that there's definitely an obligation in there for both Sancho and Rashford if they are to be loans. We can do the incentivized based wage payment, so maybe there's still the opportunity to make money on his wages, and then maybe increase the kind of penalty that would be due if the obligation doesn't happen. So it's then in the club's interest to trigger that obligation. So look, first and foremost, sell permanent deals. That is going to be easier said than done, though, because not only are the wages an issue, on top of that, the transfer fee alongside those wages are going to be an issue. So maybe you just simply cannot rule out loan deals for these players as well.
It's weird, isn't it? You think of some of the money we've brought in this summer. I think it's Max Oyedele. I don't know if that was this season or last season, but it was recently. We've got a sell-on fee for him, looking like a sell-on fee for Elanga and Alvaro Carreras as well. Then there's the $5 million that we've made for Sancho. With those four bits of income there, I think that would be like our 6th highest ever sale. and they're players that we haven't even sold in the case of Sancho,
I know.
and other clubs have sold in the case of the other three. United have been so bad at selling players that literally that is one of our top 6 ever biggest sales. I think it puts it around the same as we got for Dan James.
At least they've made a bit of money on them. But then, the cynics will say, well, why didn't they keep them then if they were that good?
I know.
So, I mean,
you can't win, can you?
Alvaro Carreras deal, that one looks like it's going through. I think it's around 15%, the sell-on. So United will probably make around over 5 million euros on that one. And I think the Elanga one was between 15 and 20 when they sold him to Forest. So they're due to make between 6 and 8 million on Elanga as well. So look, they inserted these clauses for a reason, and they're benefiting from them now.
Yeah, they are. Finally, let's talk about Garnacho, because I think on the face of it, if you go back to, let's say, the second leg of the Europa League semi-final, he's playing every single game for Manchester United. I think he played 36 league games for us last season. He's an ever-present in the squad. He's a young, exciting player who some people think is a little bit immature on the pitch, slightly frustrating off the pitch, but generally speaking, good young talent, and it's very much a mixed conversation about whether he should leave, whether he's good enough. Then we have this Europa League final, we lose, he comes out and he sort of says, I can't believe I didn't play, I played all the other minutes, why haven't I played? And then Amorim seems to turn on him, or continues to turn on him. The fan base has turned on him. He has to leave, he must leave, he can't train with anyone, he's coming in after dark and all this sort of silly stuff going on. And now it seems as though we're putting ourselves in a position where we have to sell him, but once again, we are absolutely on the back foot in terms of negotiations.
It does seem that way, and also he apparently just wants to stay in the Premier League, so that narrows it down even further. We know Napoli were interested in him, but if he's desperate to leave and he wants to stay in the Premier League, but there's another club outside the Premier League that comes in for him that United accept, then he'll have a decision to make then as well. Look, the Garnacho thing is really interesting because, as you mentioned, he was, a regular. And there was a time when Amorim was really talking him up because he was saying he is learning how to play in this position. But it's clear that what happened at the Europa League final, you just can't do that. You can't publicly, effectively criticize the manager. And I think Amorim has to show some sort of strength that he's the boss, that kind of behavior is unacceptable. You can't be doing things like that. So however valuable you feel the player is, in the long run, is it better for your strength within the group to show I'm the boss, whatever the cost is, like maybe losing someone like Garnacho? But if you remember, even though he was working hard and trying to fit into this system, the big question that everyone was asking when Amorim came in was, where does Garnacho fit into the system? He's a winger. United don't really play with wingers. Is he a wing back? Probably not. And now the two number 10s, Cunha and, for United's sake, hopefully Mbeumo as well coming in, that sends a message to everyone who potentially could have played in those positions as well. Sancho, Rashford, Antony and Garnacho. They're not going to get a game when these two are fit, are they? So that's another reason why they'll probably think, let's see if we can get the money for this player now, and we know it will be pure profit in the profit and sustainability rules. So the finances, we didn't think it would be so important, especially for a club like United, but it just shows what appears to be such mismanagement in the last 10 years in recruitment that they find themselves in this position now.
Sad, isn't it? I mean, I'm looking at the Premier League table here at the potential places he could go if he does want to stay in the Premier League, as as you said there, reports and it suggests that he does. You look at the top sort of 7 teams. I can't imagine he wants to join a team, in a relegation fight. No. Forest potentially. I guess if they're about to lose Elanga, but no offence to them, I can't see Garnacho wanting to go there. Aston Villa seem to be in a little bit of trouble financially. I don't know if they'd be able to afford that. Maybe they would. Maybe that's an option. Newcastle are signing Elanga, so they're not going to want him. Man City, I doubt will sell straight to Man City. Arsenal on the cusp of Madueke, and Liverpool, we're not selling him to Liverpool. It literally only leaves Chelsea. Of the obvious, I mean, maybe Brighton might.
The thing is, Chelsea have only got 84 forwards, haven't they? So he'll fit
exactly.
right in.
They've only got 1,000 players already there. But like, if he does want to stay in the Premier League, and you're looking at the clubs, you would assume he'd be up for joining, and the clubs that either need a winger or could even afford him, it's only Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even then they've just signed Gittins, haven't they? So that looked like the alternative to Sancho, because the Sancho deal didn't work. So I would think that they would have to sell players as well. I guess the attributes that Garnacho has that is attractive to clubs is that he can play along the front line, because he can play on the right and on the left as well. Yeah. So maybe that would be attractive to teams. Arsenal, look, there hasn't been that much of a link with him, but they're on the verge of making this 4th, 5th and 6th signings of this transfer window. But the position that they are still looking at is a player who can play on the left side and maybe across the front three as well. So Garnacho, I guess, would fit into that mold. So if you're saying, I'm not saying that Arsenal are interested in him or anything like that, but if you're saying which clubs could it be, could he fit in at Arsenal potentially, because they're looking at that position. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I like back in the day, you wouldn't even have imagined, clubs selling to other rivals within the league. It just happens all the time now. People just like, nah, we don't like him. If he comes back to haunt us, we'll take that risk. Away you go.
I think, like you said, the financial side of things just means if you can get good money, you have to take it. Yeah. I mean, other than us and Liverpool and maybe us and City these days, I don't think there's anyone in the Premier League that United wouldn't sell directly to anymore. I could see him dealing with Arsenal, Chelsea, anyone except obviously those two. Right, that'll do it, I think, Dharmesh. Thank you very much for taking us through all of those players, all of these options. Another week where we haven't really moved forward. We haven't got that Mbeumo deal, but it's nice to hear at least that there is stuff going on in the background still.
Yeah, there is. Hopefully by the time I speak to you next, we'll be talking about... did you see Cunha and Mbeumo in the pre-season tour? They looked fantastic, didn't they?
Yeah, that would be an absolute turn up for the books if we could make that happen. But thank you very much, Dharmesh, for coming on as always. Thank you for giving us all of those updates, and thank you for tuning in at home as well. This has been an interview with Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports News. We'll see you in a bit.